royal gift, a home of aristocrats, a care facility, and now an abandoned ruin. For centuries, this chateau stood as a symbol of wealth and power, surviving wars, revolutions, and generations of change. But its story will take a darker turn. Bankruptcy, decay, and finally destruction by fire. Today we step inside one of France's forgotten castles to uncover its history, its secret, and the tragic end of this once majestic castle. We are starting our adventure on the over 18-hectare big property. The property houses many different buildings, many of them were these 1970s era flats. It dates back to the last function this property had, something we'll dive into further in the video. We came across one which seemed to be quite trashed by vandals. So we didn't focus on it too much, instead going straight towards the castle. The castle's current form dates back to the 1860s, when it was rebuilt nearly completely. It was rebuilt in the typical neo-Renaissance design, combined with some neo-Gothic details, which was popular at the time among the French elites. We entered the courtyard of the castle, which hopefully would give us an entrance inside the castle. But first we came across some sort of small office. The office was covered in all sorts of old photos, from the time it was still operating. The entire ring of the courtyard buildings besides the castle seemed to be ordinary offices. All still furnished and sort of intact. It suggests a hidden closure, leaving it all behind. The history starts in the 13th century, during the reign of Charles V, King of France. He gifted this large property to Guillaume Mallet, the keeper of the Library of France, during the time. His family was from this point on part of the large group of French aristocrats and resided on this large property. Not much is known from this time, besides it surviving many difficult periods, such as multiple wars, lootings, and even the French Revolution. After the French Revolution, a difficult period began, with economic hardship for the family. Eventually, the property, including the aging castle, was sold to a competing family. We finally found an entrance, which wasn't some door, but instead a window into the basement of the castle. Via this, we slid into the basement. A grand living room was awaiting us, decorated in a quaint style with soft couches. The details on the ceiling and walls are typical for the interiors of these castles. Not much sunlight was entering the castles from the boarded up windows, one of the last attempts at protecting the castle from intruders. Being at the opposite of the living room, yet another grand hall was located. This time in a different style, containing beautiful pillars and hardwood walls, and a decorative fireplace. In the middle was a large pool table, suggesting it was probably a sort of entertainment room, back in the days of operating. The details again were plenty, showcasing the rich history. As dark this room was, as bright as the next was. This rather small room seemed to be some sort of small dining or meeting room. Besides the long table, old paperwork was left behind, still stored inside the shelf. The atmosphere in general in such old castles is quite nice to be in, with plenty of artwork and tons of natural lighting. But it was time to leave the first floor, heading upstairs onto the next floor. We followed the bendy staircase into a corridor. Here again, a ton of different rooms were located, some being unfortunately a bit trashed. It seemed that the local youth had also discovered this old castle. But it wasn't all destroyed, proven by this bedroom, still quite intact. The bed was still there, surrounded by a ton of different details and artworks on the walls. When the original family went bankrupt in the middle of the 1850s, a new family bought the castle. The property underwent massive changes, including a new castle. The new owner had a passion for architecture and went in some ways all out in the design of his castle. This also explains the extravagant details, such as the winding staircase we saw earlier. In the 1970s, the castle was again in trouble and without an owner. But a new investor quickly chimed in, who had a plan to convert it into a massive elderly care facility. He built 5 massive flats, a swimming pool and a tennis court. The castle will be used for entertainment purposes. At the time, the property employed nearly 200 people, showcasing how massive this once was. But during the turn of the millennium, these large facilities became out of fashion, prompting a difficult period once again. Eventually the company operating the facility built up massive debts of over 6 million euros. In 2020 the property was completely run down, housing just a couple of residents. But the majority were anti-squatters. Eventually, after the COVID-19 crisis, the long death of the property came to an end, closing down in 2022. The castle went into a limbo phase, with insufficient security and without a real plan. We explored this place in the summer of 2024, when the castle was getting discovered by urban explorers and vandals. But in the evening of the 3rd of June 2025, the castle was lit afire, destroying much of the details we had previously seen and covered. All of the historic, beautiful crafted rooms are now lost. The future of it all is today bleak after the fire, with costs being massive if the castle were ever to be rebuilt. And so the story, starting all the way back in the 13th century, ends in a dramatic way, details and work being lost to time forever.